Hey everybody, this video is sponsored by OKCoin Crypto Exchange. Why pay ridiculously high fees to Coinbase, Kraken, and Binance when you can use OKCoin, which has the lowest fees, guys? So if you want to save money on buying and selling and trading crypto, definitely have to use OKCoin. Sign up, link in the description. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Thinking Crypto channel. I have with me today Alex Mashinsky, who's the CEO of the Celsius Network. Alex, it's great to be speaking with you today.
Great to be back.
Alex, it's been over a year since we spoke. I'm sure lots of changes on Celsius's end. Can you tell us about what's the latest with Celsius? Anything new that we should know about?
Sure, yeah. I think last time we spoke, we had just under 600 million in assets and just over 100,000 users. And currently Celsius, at the peak, actually before the crash, we were almost at 22 billion. We're now at about 17 billion in assets and almost 1 million users. So definitely it's been a phenomenal year for us, both on the kind of customer adoption, but also on the tech side. We've introduced a lot of new features and services. Most recently, we announced $200 million investment in mining. So we're now one of the largest miners in North America. We launched proof of community. So that's a zero proof technology, or basically cryptography, to enable anyone in our community or anyone outside. You can actually use it also, even if you're not a Celsius user, to verify our assets, verify our deployment, verify our income, and verify what you earned versus everyone else. It actually ranks you within the 1 million customers we have, tells you where you are. So the equivalent would be that you would go to your bank and when you give them a deposit, you say, I want to know what you're doing with my money, where are you sending it to, how much you're earning on it. And when you give me my portion, I want to know every other customer in the bank, what are they earning as well? I want to make sure that you give me my fair share. So obviously there's no bank in the world that will be willing to do that for you. And Celsius sets a new standard that basically proves to everyone that we're acting in the best interest of our community, of our customers, which is what we've been doing for 4 years now.
I love that. I love the transparency. And to your point, there's nowhere else you can find that information or get that information. Now you mentioned,
and there's no other company that does that, right? This is no other company or project, not DeFi, not traditional finance, that does what Celsius has just launched. We call it a triple entry system, meaning it's like the double entry audit system that companies do at the end of the year, right? But here you have also an external verification, because whatever we tell you, you can go to the blockchain and verify that independently, hence the zero proof.
That's awesome. You mentioned the mining pool launch. Which assets are you mining, and what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so we only focused on Bitcoin. Our largest payment is in BTC. So for us, it's just a way to basically pay our community more, right? So if currently we used to rely on institutions, exchanges, DeFi, retail as the fourth sources of yield, now we have a fifth source, right? Which is Bitcoin, for Bitcoin mining. Because for us, mining is like building a Bitcoin factory that produces Bitcoin. We have to pay Bitcoin to our community. Why not mine it instead of just generating yield? So the beauty of having those 5 legs to the stool is that unlike any other competitor that we have, for example, DeFi can only generate yield on Ethereum when there is demand for loans. Right now, there's no demand, so the average yield on DeFi is 2 to 3%, but Celsius still pays 8.8%, for example, on stable coins. We still pay 6.2% on Bitcoin and so on. So the reason we can pay a higher yield is because we have much more diversified, broad source of yield that others just cannot replicate. So, and again, all this is good for the community. It's not like we are keeping it, hoarding it all to ourselves. We're giving the vast majority, up to 80% of it, back to the community every Monday, every week.
Wow. From a mining standpoint, you mentioned, I think you're mining specifically in the United States or North America, I should say. Can you tell us about where in the United States you're doing that, and any information on the hash rate or where you're at in the stage of expanding this?
Yeah, so we did this before the mining crackdown in China. Again, our focus was on yield. The timing has been obviously phenomenal because we went and locked hundreds of megawatts of renewable energy, both from West Texas and in the Tennessee Valley and a few other places in the Northwest. And now we're also adding some capacity in Canada. And, we talk about several exahashes that worth of mining capacity. Again, depending how you measure the stuff, we would be either the number 2 or number 1 largest miner in North America. So, and again, all of it is renewable resources. We also made investments in 3 different companies, external companies like Core Scientific and Rhodium and Luxor, where again, those are also companies that are using either carbon credits or other things to be carbon neutral. So our investment is not just in the mining operations, but also in the ecosystem in North America. And again, all these things are generating yield for our community. So if you're a Celsius user, you're in the mining business. You don't have to start mining by yourself. You effectively automatically are included in our mining operations.
Wow, that's so cool. I honestly didn't know that you guys had launched this, and that's pretty amazing. So my next question would be, are you part of the Bitcoin Mining Council that was recently formed?
Yeah, so we are. If you look at the last report that Michael Saylor did, if you look at that video, you'll see the Celsius logo on that sheet of companies that are included. And obviously, I think it's a great idea to basically make sure that all the miners operate in the same standards, report in the same standards, and are doing what's in the best interests of the Bitcoin community, right? I mean, I think Michael Saylor is somebody Michael has almost as many Bitcoin as Celsius. We have just 111,000 Bitcoins. He's, I think, at 107,000. So obviously, we both want what's best for Bitcoin and for the Bitcoin users, for the Bitcoin hodlers. Celsius is a hodler community. Michael Saylor is a hodler. What else can I say? It was love at first sight. So,
Recently, I heard you spoke about your users. You're looking at what action your users are taking with the current market correction. You still believe we are in a bull market, and we could see another bull run up sometime this year. Are there any other interesting statistics from your users that you guys are noticing and that you could share?
Yeah, so like I joke that people think I'm a messiah and I can predict the future, and I keep telling them I'm just reading the numbers from our community. And by the way, anyone can read the numbers, and the data is available for free in our app. You just download the app and you log into our community page, and there's detailed information in there about what the Celsius community does, what hodlers do, because most people don't understand that when they look at this at the Coinbase or Binance or whatever, that is not the hodlers who are trading there. That's not the hodlers who are moving the market. Hodlers are 70% of the community. And really, the 10% that is constantly trading and moving the market is the one dictating the price. So if you want to know what's happening under, on this iceberg under the water, you have to look at Celsius and not look at what's happening, the trading activity or the price activity that's happening on exchanges. So as an example, last week, we reported over $300 million in net deposits for the week, right? So that's one of our best weeks ever. and we're supposedly in a bear market. So the Celsius community is saying, what bear market? We are buying and depositing as more coins than almost ever before. We only had 1 week in the last 4 years in which we had a little bit more than the 300 million we did last week. So that tells you that the hodler behavior is very, very different than what the market is telling you. Mm-hmm. And despite the fact that I did say we may revisit the 30,000 price because of the GBTC trade and a few other things, I'm sticking with my prediction that I did in January, that we're going to hit anywhere between 140 and 160,000 this year, just looking at the accumulation, looking at the speed, and basically extrapolating that to the entire hodler community. Also, we had the flippening already, meaning in Celsius, the Celsius community held more Ethereum than Bitcoin earlier this year. Wow. So the value of the Ethereum that they held was greater than the value of the Bitcoin they held in US dollars, right? So that's another thing that's probably going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. In the real world, it's already happening in Celsius. So I view Celsius as a leading indicator. I view Celsius as the community itself as kind of like this secret index that we have a chance to look into. But we're not keeping that secret to ourselves. We share that with everybody. Every opportunity like this one, I share and I invite people to join Celsius and get access to the same data.
Are you currently running any promos as far as for new users or anything like that?
Yeah, we have several promos. Again, we announce them every Friday at 1 p.m. That's my show on YouTube. But if I remember them correctly, we have a promo. You can sell token from us, OTC, and get a 10-cent discount on the price. I think it's you get $100 if you take a new loan. First time loan. So again, the $100 in many cases is more than the entire interest you will pay the first year on your loan. So we're effectively making it less than zero loan on your first loan. Also, you can get I think up to $500 on your deposit if you deposit more than 25,000. All that information is available on our website. And if you refer anybody, you get $40, they get $40. Again, all that, we have several promotions right now. All that is available either on the video from last week. You can watch that on Celsius Network on YouTube, or available on our website as well. And obviously, again, we don't really advertise a lot. We don't spend money on Google or Facebook or the UFC or things like that. We rather take the same dollars and give them to our community. So you'll see us continuously do promotions and incentivize our community to educate others about the benefits of hodling, the benefits of earning yield. And, we've paid interest every Monday for almost 4 years. That's longer than anyone in crypto. Obviously, almost two years longer than DeFi, since we invented this category of creating yield on crypto. We now pay on 42 different assets, including gold. You can earn gold on your gold, on your tokenized gold. You can buy it from Pax Gold. You can buy it from Tether Gold. We don't create the product. We just pay yield on it. So all these things are very exciting because as a new user, a lot of people tell me, but I'm afraid of Bitcoin. I'm like, we have stable coins. It's the same dollars you're holding in your bank. They're issued by a trust company like Circle or like Coinbase, which actually holds treasuries. That's safer than an IOU from your bank. When you give your money to your bank, you get an IOU. That's much worse than having US treasuries in an escrow account effectively held by a trust company, which is what you get from and you earn 8.8% on that. So it's we as a community, we really need to do a better job educating the masses. And the funny thing is that after 4 years, Coinbase is finally offering 4% on USDC. So we forced their hand, I guess. It only took them 4 years, and they're paying you half of what Celsius pays. So So thanks for the validation, you know.
So with the great growth that you guys have seen over the years, is there, I have to ask, because it seems there's a trend of IPOs now from and companies going public. Is there plans for Celsius Network to go public?
So we have plans to participate in you know, in the public markets. We definitely have you know, we have to build bridges between traditional finance and crypto, and that's our job, right? We are while DeFi is trying to stay pure and not have any connection to traditional finance, Celsius really has one leg in traditional finance and one leg in crypto, right? And we support 14 different blockchains. So the analogy would be that we have 14 different bridges into traditional finance. Unlike most projects that only support one or two blockchains, right? So I think we've done a very good job at that, and part of that effort is also participating in traditional finance, in capital markets, and that involves debt or equity or other types of offerings. So we're working on all of that. But Celsius already, look, we've done an ICO back in 2017. We did a round of funding last year, and in both of those we included our community. Like in the round of funding, over 1,000 of our Celsian customers have joined in and sat on the bus right next to me, owning the same equity that I own, right? So you didn't see the Coinbase do that. You didn't see Uber or Facebook or anyone do that, right? Now they could invite their customers to benefit from the value creation, but instead they choose to basically give all that value to their venture capitalist, right? So Celsius is different. Celsius is the community, and it's very important for us to make sure that we align our interest, paying the highest yield, having the best token. Last year, Messari ranked Celsius as the top performing token for all of 2020. So aligning on the token, aligning on the interest, on the yield, and on the equity, right? So I would say Celsius is the only company that allows you to do that, because we are so careful and so you know, it's so important for us to put the community first.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you a bit about more of Bitcoin and the crypto market, because it's so fast paced. There's so many things happening. Obviously, we had the China kicking miners out, and they've migrated to other countries. And which is really cool. They came to the United States, some in Maryland, some in Texas. You know, what are your thoughts on that, especially now that you're in the mining game, and the breaking up of the mining pool, so to speak, in China?
Yeah, so China, most people don't know, but China has twice as much hydropower than all of the United States, right? So we think of the United States as the country with the most renewable energy or the most electricity overall, but China actually trumps the United States in electricity production and in hydroelectricity production. So the reason the miners were in China, there were really two reasons, right? One is that there is a restriction on capital flows, and basically creating Bitcoin in China is a form of exporting of value out of China, right? If I can pay my employees in Chinese yuan, I can pay for the equipment in Chinese yuan, but what I make sells for dollars, it's basically a way to pull that capital value outside of China, right? So that was one reason. The second reason why people actually left China, why China is pushing against Bitcoin so hard, is not that they hate Bitcoin. They're creating the world's largest digital currency, the Chinese yuan. They just want to clear the way. They hate USDT, they hate Bitcoin, they hate stable coins, because those things compete with their own digital currency. So it's not that they hate digitization or hate digital currencies. They had things that are competing with their own version to become the next reserve currency of the world, right? China not just wants this to be used inside of China, and they already have, I think, 10 cities in which they airdrop. They actually airdropped these tokens on their citizens, but also their Belt and Road Initiative, which includes 68 countries, is all going to be denominated in digital yuan, not in dollars. You want to transact on that highway, you're going to need to have digital yuan. So here we have basically a three-horse race between the government CBDC's versions, which is China is one example of it, the open source decentralized version, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and 10,000 other projects. And then the third version is our corporate version, which is, again, Facebook or JP Morgan or other types of kind of global companies that can, like if Apple came up with the digital currency, I think we would all trust it, right? So those are the three horses, the three players. They're all racing as fast as possible to try to get global adoption. And the question is, who we, the citizens of the world, who are we going to vote for with our wallets, right? Are we going to vote for the open source like we did with internet? Or are we going to let this or that company or country dominate our financial future?
I love how you put the analogy there with the three-horse race. I didn't think about it because, yeah, to your point, the corporates, JPM Coin and Facebook might be releasing there soon. So I'm assuming, you know, the move of the miners spread across the world is definitely good for the market. Some people see it as bearish, like, oh no, what's happening? The hash rate dropped. But I don't know if you agree with me, but it seems like this is actually good, more decentralization of the mining.
Yeah, there's no question that we're decentralized, but remember, it's the same player that used to be in China that's now in Kazakhstan. Iran issued 50 licenses for 50 miners from China to come to Iran because they have very low cost electricity as well, right? Their currency devalued by like 70 or 80%. So now you're buying that electricity at a 70% discount, right? So not everybody's coming to North America or the United States. Some are not. And but the decentralization away from China is definitely happening. But you have to remember that most of the players are the same players. So you still have Chinese owners who are just running their business in other countries. So it's great for, you know, more than 50% of the hash rate was in China. So we were all worried about it for a decade. Now we don't have to worry about that anymore. But you know, it's great for Celsius because we're mining twice as many Bitcoins every week with the same equipment because the hash rate came down and we have less competition, right? Bitcoin is still creating 6.25 Bitcoin every 10 or 15 minutes. It's just that the number of machines competing for them is down by 30 or 40%.
So I have to ask about our friend Elon Musk.
Who's that?
He seems a bit bipolar at times when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, and I'm sure some of it has to do with the folks he's beholden to as far as investors and probably green energy credit. But obviously, he said when the Bitcoin mining hits 50% renewable energy, as far as all the miners using or mining, he would activate payments again in Bitcoin for Tesla. What are your thoughts on Elon and what he's been doing in the back and forths and I know they have the B word conference coming up and he's supposedly going to be speaking with Jack, but who knows?
So first, I want to make a statement, and you can check me on this, that Bitcoin today is greener than any Tesla car. Okay. And the reason for that is that when you plug your Tesla into the wall, you are using the grid, the national grid. And the national grid in the United States is less than 40% renewables. So your Tesla is 60% coal and natural gas. 60% of the electricity you charge your Tesla with. It doesn't matter that the Tesla is green. What matters is where did you get that electricity?
Sure.
If you watch Michael Saylor analysis, 67% of the current mining already that's happening is renewable sources. So your Bitcoin is much greener than your Tesla. Okay, so Elon, first, I don't think Elon sold even 10 cars with Bitcoin. So when Elon says, "Oh, we're gonna start accepting it," it's not like there's gonna be a giant line of people waiting to give away their Bitcoin to Elon, right? I mean, most people are smart and they understand that the Tesla that you bought loses half of its value in 3 years, right? What do you think that Bitcoin, the Bitcoin you're giving Tesla, what do you think it's going to be worth in 3 years? It's probably going to be worth 3 to 5 times more.
Right.
So the asset you're willing to exchange with one of the world's richest people, what you're going to get is going to go down by 50%, guaranteed. There is no scenario where your car, your Tesla, is going to be worth more money than it's worth today in 3 years from now. But there's a pretty good chance that your Bitcoin will be worth more. So Elon is, I stated this publicly, I think is a tourist in crypto. He came from fiat land into crypto land. He discovered that there is a lot of followers. He can pick like this by just tweeting about this or that. And that's what he likes. He likes add a follower. He likes the fact that he can move the price. He used to be able to move the prices of Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever else. And none of that is good for our community. None of that is good for Bitcoin. So we just have to put him on the next plane back from crypto land, back to fiat land, and wish him well, one-way ticket, and take away his visa to come back to visit us at crypto land.
I'm in agreement with that. And let's see what he has to say at the B Word conference. But to your point, the less impact he has in the market, it's going to be better for everybody.
The more we interview him, the worse it's going to be for crypto.
Now I want to get back to you on the Ethereum flipping Bitcoin, because that's a pretty significant statement. And you said in the Celsius network, obviously you're seeing that among the users. What are the catalysts that you feel would drive Ethereum to surpass Bitcoin? Is it DeFi, NFTs? Can you give your thesis on why do you think that might happen?
So again, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin is not going up. Again, I'm projecting that Bitcoin is going to go up at least 3 to 5x. So we're not saying Bitcoin is bad or Bitcoin is losing its momentum or anything like that. My interpretation of what our community is doing is that the value they attribute to store of value, right? The ability to kind of detach yourself from the US dollar is not as important as the utility of being able to generate yield. So basically, I think everyone on the planet, 7.8 billion people, if you came to me and you said, do you want to earn more on your fiat currency? Every one of them would say, of course.
Right.
What do I need to do? And you tell them, well, take your currency, tokenize it, put it on Ethereum, and magically it's now earning yield, right? That is something you cannot do with Bitcoin. So the question is really just, what's the use case? How many people want to detach from the dollar or from the yuan or from the ruble? And how many people want to earn yield in native currencies, right? So I'm just saying that the application of yield, and I've been saying this since 2015. It's not, you can see, it's not something new that I just came up with. I've been saying since 2015 that the killer app for crypto, the first one was store of value. The second one is all about yield. And just instead of calling it DeFi, I called it MOIP, money over IP. And everybody thought that DeFi was much more sexy, so they went with that.
Well, there's probably still a chance for you to do it. The market's still young, where you can push that branding, so to speak.
Here we are. We're pushing MOIP. MOIP.
Do you have an Ethereum price prediction?
So for it to exceed Bitcoin, again, it needs to go more than 5x, right? So if we're at 2K, I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I do see Ethereum exceeding the 10K level. Most of what's being built today in decentralized finance is happening on Ethereum. And while, Polkadot, Cardano, other projects have phenomenal technology. I think they're going to be successful if they find yet another use case, yet another killer app. It's going to be very hard for those projects to kind of unlock or steal the thunder of DeFi from Ethereum. And you can do it temporarily, like that's what Binance, I think, did with BSC, creating a copycat or a fork of Ethereum. But when Ethereum, just like Uniswap, when SushiSwap stole a lot of that volume, Uniswap came up with a new version and stole a lot of that volume back. Same thing is going to happen here. When ETH2 launches and all this new infrastructure and speed and everything and layer 2, all that stuff happens in parallel, you're going to see a lot of activity come back to the mainnet and run on Ethereum and not on something else.
Sure. I'm definitely in agreement there, and I'm excited for ETH2. Now, with the market currently in the correction phase that it's in, do you see Bitcoin double peaking? And I know you kind of spoke to this earlier when I asked the question, but double peaking like it did in 2013. And what do you think? Is this cycle going to be more extended? What might be the catalyst to drive the price back up? And any thoughts around those items?
So I'm not a technical analyst. I'm sure you probably do it better than me. And there's 100 people on YouTube who do technical charting all day long, and they show you how this or that happened. I'm just looking at two things, right? One is we know exactly how much Bitcoin is being created. There's no question about that. So the only question is demand. Are we adding user? Yes, we are, quicker than ever before. Are we adding whales? And are we adding guppies? Are we adding shrimps? Are we adding? Yes, in all those categories, we're adding a lot of new users, probably faster than ever before. So do we have sellers? Yeah, we have a correction. We're going through Bitcoin is not green FUD. China is shutting down everything, FUD, you name it, right? And with all of that, Bitcoin is holding that 30K, 30 to 35K levels pretty well. So I still think we're at the first or second inning for corporate and institutional adoption. So those rails are just being rolled out, right? When you see Visa announcing this is going to accept USDC, that is thousands of banks, hundreds of thousands or millions of institutions for the first time being able to accept payments in USDC, right? You go to China, you go to Hong Kong, you go to other countries, they accept USDT already. You'll see stores that accept USDT as a form of payment. We don't have anything like that in the West, and all that is coming. So when I see all those things are just now being rolled out, it tells me that we're just at the very early innings. And since the supply is capped, we're going to see new all-time highs.
One of the things that we're all waiting for in the United States, at least, is Bitcoin ETF. The SEC has cited different things. Obviously, custody has gotten better. Price aggregation has gotten better. Do you think, what does your gut tell you? We might get one or two Bitcoin ETFs approved this year?
So I think there is a dozen applications pending, right? From, I think, at least 7 billionaires, right? So you got Kathy Wood, and you got the Winklevoss twins, and you got Mike Novogratz, and I can name a bunch of billionaires there. So when you have so many billionaires trying to get this thing done, it tells you that there's a lot of basically lobbying going on in Washington right now. Now, I understand why the SEC has been taking their time. I agree that there is price manipulation, and that, again, the tail is wagging the dog here, as we say. And if you want proof, watch the price of Bitcoin on weekends and tell me if you don't think that's manipulation. So I think the SEC has a good point or a good argument about the fact that there's manipulation, but you have to remember that the SEC is not the legislative. They're not the guys setting the laws. They're the cop on the street that can write you a ticket. Their job is to enforce the laws. And it's not their job. Legally, I don't think they have authority to say what is good, what is bad, what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. From my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding of the SEC rules, their job is to review applications and say, are they compliant or non-compliant to the ETF process. So, and I bet you that most of the applications, some of them being submitted for the third or fourth time now, are compliant. So I think we're at the end of the stalling that the SEC can do in not issuing ETF. So I think it's going to happen later this year or probably the latest beginning of next year. And if you're talking about the price of Bitcoin, it's probably going to double on the day that we announce an ETF. The price of Bitcoin will double. Like the next trade will be at a much, much higher level because we've seen that in Canada, we've seen it in Brazil, we've seen it in Europe. A bunch of ETFs were issued and $1 billion showed up like this. So imagine what is the pent-up demand in the United States for an ETF, for a Bitcoin ETF. So I think it's probably the biggest good news that Bitcoin is waiting for is this approval. And it's coming soon, but no one knows when.
Sure. I want to get your thoughts on El Salvador, and obviously huge move in adopting Bitcoin. What do you think about that? And do you see other countries that might follow suit?
Yeah, so continue our 3-horse analogy, right? So countries come in 3 types. One is countries that are their own denominate debt or issue their own currency, and they are a reserve currency, right? So we think of the United States as the reserve currency, but actually the European Union, Japan are also effectively reserve currencies, right? They're just reserve currencies in their regions instead of a global reserve currency. So that's type 1. And those countries will not adopt Bitcoin as a currency anytime soon because they see Bitcoin as competition for store of value, for form of payment, for medium of exchange, and so on. So then the second type are countries that are not reserve currency that are issuing their own currency, right? So if I'm Turkey and I'm not a reserve currency, I issue my own currency, I definitely not going to support Bitcoin, right? And I'm going to fight it. I'm Venezuela, I'm Lebanon, I'm Argentina. I'm going to fight Bitcoin till the bitter end because I want sovereign control over the issuing of my own currency. The third type are countries like El Salvador and others that don't have their own currency. Most people don't know that El Salvador, legal tender in El Salvador is the US dollar. So there is no El Salvador dollar, right? So the country is basically saying we are bound, we are tethered to the US currency anyway. Should we add a second currency that detaches us, that effectively reduces our dependence on a country that is the reserve currency, which seems to print money out of thin air, trillions of dollars out of thin air, right? So as American, I can tell you that, of course, I want El Salvador and other countries to stay on the US dollar, but I can understand why the prime minister there or the president decided to add a second legal tender, right? So instead of just the US dollar, they're adding tether. So there is probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 countries in the world that are pegged to the US dollar and do not have their own local currency. So those are the countries you will see very quickly adopt this because it's in their best interest to do so. But I think they're all going to wait and see what happens with El Salvador. Does El Salvador have problems with the IMF? Does El Salvador have problems with corresponding banks with its use of the SWIFT, of the IBAN networks, and so on? So I think right now there is a little bit of a lull. Countries are waiting to see what's going to happen. You hear rumors about Panama and Uruguay and all kind of other countries all countries without their own currency. So I think that 3-horse race is where we are. One horse is about to leave the stable, but no one is sure if this race even knows which way to go, right? So if we see a problem with El Salvador, that's going to put a lot of cold water on this idea that countries are going to adopt this. So in the next few months, we'll find out. Obviously, I think all of us in the crypto community are cheering for what's happening there, but it's an early science experiment. It can blow up or it can be great. We don't know yet.
Sure. Yeah. Well, to your point, we have to wait until I think it's in September when it's officially goes live, if I'm not mistaken. I did want to get your thoughts on 2 more items before we wrap it up here. NFTs, and if Celsius are you guys going to do anything on the NFT front?
Well, I think it's still early days. NFTs, I think, have a phenomenal utility, right? I mean, crypto comes in 2 types, fungible and non-fungible, right? So fungible is what we use on Ethereum or Bitcoin and so on. Every Bitcoin is just like another Bitcoin, unless it's virgin mined with renewable resources, then we think it's special. But but the point is that NFTs are one of a kind, right? And most of the world we live in is actually one of a kind, right? Your car is not similar to anybody's else car, even if it's the same make and model and year. And the same thing about your house, and the same thing about the Picasso or any other things that you own. So I think when we try to kind of connect the real world into the digital world, the role of NFTs is going to be phenomenal. We've had several attempts, right? We tried breeding crypto kitties, and we thought that was a great idea. And now we had all of these, cypherpunks and other things that we are experimenting with. But all of those are digital experiments. We have not yet bridged the real world. I think that's where the real opportunity is. That's where the killer app is. And Celsius is focused on that part of the NFT world where we think we can extend or create more value by digitizing some of the stuff that exists in the real world and enable people to transact or manage or finance those items.
Final question here. The Ripple XRP lawsuit from the SEC, in many ways, a lot of eyeballs on it because the determination or outcome might be how the SEC treats the rest of the market. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, so you have to think of all of the coins and tokens out there as a continuum. It's not just like, okay, they're all in the bad bucket, right? So some of them are in good standing. Like I think Celsius, our Cell token, is in good standing. We never got an action letter or anything like that. Why? We filed a Reg D exemption with the SEC the minute we issued the token, right? We filed with FinCEN. Well, I think Celsius was the first project to do that. People were screaming at us, why are you talking to the SEC? Like, you're going to cause all of us problems. And we're like, regulation is regulation. We can't hide from it. So you have a bunch of people on that side. There's also a few tokens that receive an exemption from the SEC, right? The SEC basically said, you're good to go. You're not a security, right? So on the other extreme, you have things that are clearly a security that the SEC basically gave a cease and desist or already shut down. And Ripple is somewhere in the middle, right? So we don't know if XRP is or is not a security. I think the SEC chose to pick them as a way to kind of decide where the line is so they can clearly delineate what is legal, what is not legal. And now the judge and the jury has to decide who's right and who's wrong. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the case is on both sides. I know it's all about the Howey test and how do you actually measure what and where. But from my layman understanding is that I don't remember Ripple doing an offering, meaning they did not go and say, here, come buy tokens from us in the traditional the way that securities do that. So all the purchases are done effectively in the secondary market. which may present a problem for the Howey test. So, we like Ripple. We obviously have Ripple on the Celsius network. It earns yield, and we think that the SEC may lose the case. I have no idea, but if they do, then all that's going to mean is that they have to pick the line somewhere else in that continuum, right? So they're going to have to shift to the left. If they win, they may decide to pick the line and shift to the right, closer to what most tokens are doing today. So it's a very important battle. Right. But again, we are voting for innovation. I think what's most important for Celsius, for the community, is that regulators and enforcement agencies like the SEC or the CFTC look at everything that's going on as a continuous experiment where we are trying to test and invent and create new ideas. And then we have to prove that these things are good for the people. I mean, the SEC's job is to protect not the incumbent, but rather you and me, the citizens of this country, from any illicit activity or bad apples. And sometimes if they stifle innovation, that is hurting all of us. It's not protecting all of us, it's hurting all of us. So finding that line is not easy. I'm not saying in any way that clearly here is the line and we should just go for that. And I think, there's a lot of smart people in the SEC and the CFTC and in the FinCEN who are now thinking about, okay, how do we create rules? Because these are going to become instantly global rules. It's not just US, right? Every foreign regulator is going to say, if that's what the SEC is thinking, I'm going to copy the same T's and C's. So it's very important for us as an industry to lobby and make sure that we give room for innovation. I think Andreessen Horowitz and a bunch of Coinbase, I know Fidelity, there's a bunch of firms that publicly announced that they are lobbying in Washington to make sure that all of us get to innovate and get to experiment, as long as you're doing it in the best interest of the people, right? That's the most important piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I always learn so much. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. And I want to thank you for again, continuing to educate people. You keep producing those shows, rain or shine. And obviously created a great community, and I love the content. I watch it regularly. I learn a lot from you too, and definitely we need more people like you to basically expand the community and make it. It's a difficult subject for a lot of people, so making them comfortable, getting them, walking them through this educational path. You're doing God's work.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Alex.
Take care.